Hello, my name is Donald Hooker. I am the Director of Research here at Bourne Partners. In early December, we published a deep dive research report on the home and alternate site infusion therapy space. One of the key topics of our report that we explored was the opportunity for infusion providers to use software automation to competitively differentiate themselves. Also, in our due diligence, we found that many investors prefer infusion providers who have a clearly defined technology roadmap. So we think that having an articulatable technology strategy is critical for providers potentially looking to sell their businesses. So, to get deeper perspective on this topic, we're super excited to have a chance to have a brief conversation with Trey Holderman, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Tennr. Tennr is a rapidly growing healthcare IT vendor focused on helping providers automate their workflows and optimize their operations. So, Trey, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, Don, pleasure. And by the way, obviously, got to say, you guys did do an incredible report here. Both, I think, accurate to what we're seeing in the marketplace, and also some definitely aligned forecasting, I'd say, for how it seems to be shaking out going into the future.
Great, great. Yeah. So yeah, we do spend a lot of time in infusion, and we do see a tremendous sort of patient demand for these services over the next decade. But I think managing referral relationships can be particularly challenging for some of these providers. So maybe Trey, start off with, would love to hear kind of how you see opportunities for infusion providers to use software to sort of attract and retain referral relationships.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, before I go into, just on the infusion center side of the business, we think about it kind of holistically. Patients in the U.S. healthcare system do not move on sort of structured rails, right? The healthcare system looks nothing like the financial system, where payments can move quickly and sort of relatively unencumbered. It is about sort of cajoling and convincing folks to send over orders, to send over additional clinical records, to double check, to rewrite scripts at certain times. And it's this really painful sort of back and forth process. And so the name of the game, right, when you're in a position like an AIC, and you're saying, hey, I want to go and convince that I'm a trustworthy partner, the number one thing that folks in the field will tell you is they need to show that they're reliable with incredibly quick turnaround times, and that they know where every patient is every step of the journey. I got into this world because my mother was in family medicine, complaining about how she'd send patients out. Actually, there's one imaging center in particular. She said it was like sending them into the black hole. So they called it Black Hole Imaging Center there. And the biggest thing that we see in the market over and over is obviously having a great service, but it's also being able to communicate that you take care of the patient really every step of the journey. And so I think um, alternative site is just a great product, and the folks that are just killing it out there are the ones that are able to communicate not just the value of the product, but the value of their services in delivering a product. And that's absolutely why we're seeing those guys just grow like crazy.
Great. And are there particular challenges, like when you mentioned a number of things there. Are there particular challenges that you see providers have when they're onboarding patients? I mean, I think of infusion as being involving fairly complex patients.
Yeah, no, it's sensitive, it's complex, and I mean, there's really two elements to it, right? Everybody that we work with would love to say, "Hey, to hell with the paperwork. We just want to take the patient and provide a great service." But there's, of course, a third party, there's the payer. And so they need to make sure that they are going to get paid for the services that they're performing. And so you have this sort of weird little dance that almost looks like getting a package through customs of sort of a foreign country that maybe is an adversary, where you're trying to basically dot all your I's and cross all your T's while keeping a patient in the loop of this sort of harrowing process that you're hopefully going through on their behalf, so that they don't really experience it, they don't feel it. So you are, as a provider that's receiving a patient that's getting sent a script or an order, yeah, you're basically doing that dance. You have to somehow put this like, very complex process on rails and automate as much as you possibly can so that your OpEx doesn't go through the roof. And then you have to, at the surface level, be super quick and communicative with your patients and your referral sources, so that it just looks like it's another day of business, and that everything is streamlined and fast. So it's an operational problem that should stay an operational problem, but it very quickly becomes a service problem, and it quickly becomes a satisfaction problem, and then ultimately can become a sales problem if you don't do a great job of guiding those patients along.
Yeah, I guess once you think about infusion therapy, also I would think that you're dealing with very expensive drugs. You're dealing often with very rare diseases. as well, complex patients. I would think, you get the patient in the door, you got to get paid. So are there particular, like when I think about the revenue cycle management process for infusion in particular, um, can you talk about maybe some of the software solutions that exist there and where some of the pressure points are?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, what we've done and really what's led to like our growth is we sort of were able to, I think, get folks to realize that you can just about guarantee, that you're going to be successful if you move a lot of the work that's been traditionally thought of to be as revenue cycle on the back end into really the front end. And it sounds obvious when there's a potentially $30,000, drug that's being administered because, hey, I don't want to take any chances, right? I don't want to have to litigate after I'm already down. I want to make sure that I've done it right. And, the key sort of unlock has been we've been able to translate all of these guidelines about from medical criteria and really the determination of what qualifies a patient to receive a therapy, and we've been able to automate uh, by building very specialized language models for the task that can say, hey, you know, based on this 100 pages of chart notes and clinicals on this patient, I found enough supporting evidence to say that this patient's going to be good. You're going to be successful in authorization. Let's go and send it. And we know that we're selecting the right payer, the right plan every single time. So really, it's like the whole continuum from the moment that you receive documentation. Do you get it structured? Do you get it into your system? And then are you instantly able to communicate with the patient and confirm back with the referral source? And then as the process moves along, there's just multiple steps. Things like what I described about qualifying, making sure the patient, you have all the records that you need, making sure the auth is getting submitted in a timely manner. And then the thing that I think has just this insane sort of ROI element is we've built all these integrations upstream, right, into into referral systems, EMRs, and experiences that just show those guys, hey, this is the status of all my patients, so that they're not picking up the phone, checking up again, creating the back and forth that doesn't always have to exist.
There's a lot of interesting points there. I guess another theme that we talked about, we explored in our report is just the fragmentation of the home and alternate site infusion therapy provider marketplace, right? You have a lot of mom and pop providers, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of them that seem to have fairly limited sophistication with regards to adopting and using software and information technology. This is going to be something that's really important for this business. How would you kind of suggest providers consider vendor selection, and sort of how do you suggest they build a technology strategy if they're starting from scratch as a mom and pop?
Yeah, I mean, look, what I personally spend a lot of time thinking about and studying is the great sort of migration to ERPs in the 80s and 90s. You had every company under the sun basically moving to structuring a bunch of processes that used to be a ton of humans, and the size of the company taking on the ERP project really wasn't actually what indicated success nearly as much as, frankly, the ERP partner that they worked with. That continues to be true in, when folks choose an EMR, right? Are they going to be successful? But we're at such a late stage of the game that folks really know how to go through um, setting up a system of record, right? So I think of ERP and I think of system of record. I think of EMR or PMS, I think of system of record. It's almost like a trained art. You go to the restaurant and everybody, like, they know, people know how to be a waiter. They've learned that. There's sort of a new wave of software, obviously, that's not really a system of records, it's a system of work. And so you're taking now, instead of records that would be stored and accessed by 20 different people, you're taking work flows and trying to basically map them into processes. And again, we've just found, I mean, we see customers that have gone on these, like, death marches of workflow trying to automate things. And what we've always said is, if you don't have an opinion about what an optimal workflow looks like
Mhm.
given the technology, you're just going to be very unsuccessful. So I guess my advice to providers is that you got to look at any sort of time that you're implementing technology as an opportunity to really revamp how the process is run, because there's a whole lot of processes that you would have to be doing if you didn't have an EMR. And then the same thing is, there's a whole lot of processes you won't have to be doing sort of with a nice system of work. And that's, I think, that's where a lot of ERP implementations went wrong in many decades, was folks didn't actually change their processes. They just threw on technology and hoped that, efficiency would come. and it's ultimately just not the case. So, but to answer the question specifically about mom and pops, um, again, like it's more just about, is there the buy-in? Is there the commitment to say, look, in this future state, what should the process actually look like? And I've seen, small providers have tremendous success when they have the right leadership buy-in, and I've seen large providers really struggle for time because they're kicking the can down the road and getting in their own way. So I actually don't think it's necessarily a disadvantage to be smaller in some of these cases.
Interesting. Interesting. And I guess maybe more broadly, so Tennr services different provider verticals. I mean, home infusion is one we're focused on here today, but there are other types of providers you guys service and provide solutions for. How does home infusion maybe compare? Are there elements that we haven't talked about where home infusion might compare better or worse or different than other sort of provider verticals in your experience?
I think that the key kind of element, right, in this space is just the value of every single patient. Conversion is really can be the name of the game. Not dropping a single patient really is the name of the game. And obviously, that sounds true, right, for an imaging appointment or for, a simple procedure. But there's really just another level of, like, you're just playing higher stakes when you're talking about home infusions. So I think that's what I think has, creates a dynamic where folks are sometimes very overstaffed or potentially very bloated, because they say, hey, we can't afford the mistakes. And then as they get bigger or as they get under more sort of maybe investor board scrutiny, they're like, now we have to really go back and really relook at a lot of these workflows. I think that's something that's pretty novel about the space. But by and large, because you have a lot of sophistication from manufacturers, we tend to find that folks that are working in pharma space are usually a little bit more sophisticated than folks that are maybe purely clinical, or provider groups or things of that nature. So that's maybe just a compliment, I guess, to the industry that they're pretty darn impressive.
And Trey, I guess we can't have a conversation without talking about some of the advances that we've seen in artificial intelligence. I guess Gen AI and agentic AI and all this AI stuff we're hearing about. How has the sort of the emergence of new AI technologies impacted Tennr?
Frankly, we started the company because Diego, my co-founder, and I were like looking around, and in 2020, in the Stanford AI lab, we were literally asking ourselves, "Hey, what are our parents gonna, or what are our future kids gonna make fun of us for not working in the way that we kind of made fun of our parents for not being kind of early to the internet?" And it was like very, very clear at the time, with Google Vision models, attention is all you need had come out 3 years earlier. It really felt like the future. So we always sort of viewed it as like, man, this is a raw material. This is like steel being developed. There's going to be, incredible product built from that. That was a belief of ours almost 6 years ago now. And I think it's obviously kind of come to true. And yet simultaneously, I'm not out there saying like, man, every steel product is going to be useful, right? I think you can still buy a bunch of like crappy steel products. And so that's how we tend to view it. The idea that you can do incredible sort of token prediction, which is trying to calculate really what the next word should be, using attention, right? The attention mechanism to be able to predict, hey, given all this patient's records, what do we think the answer is to this question? That's a fundamental unlock to all the workflows that we've been able to build upon. And so I think that raw material is absolutely like the fuel for an insane wave of technology innovation that we're seeing. And yet simultaneously, right, there's probably never been more, smoke and mirrors in the market of what can be done than ever. So it's very hard to kind of hold both sides in your own head, where you're like, on the technical level, it's so exciting, it's so fascinating. Like, obviously was willing and excited to sort of devote my life to this. But on the other hand, you're like, yeah, but it's not as good as, Sam Altman might be saying, or folks have been promising was going to happen by 2027. And yet there's a ton of value in the raw resource. And I think folks are seeing that. So it's been really, really cool to be a part of.
That's super interesting. Maybe Trey, in closing, are there sort of what's next for Tennr over the next sort of 3 to 5 years? Are there particular aspects of your business that you're looking to grow?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think, we're in New York City, so I always love to make the joke that, the reason I can buy, a stock from my phone, or I can trade some strange, weird option, with a million different, stop losses and different hits, is not because there is a million people that are running around in the New York Stock Exchange getting faster at spending papers. It's because you've structured a system that's on rails, and now we're doing things that folks, when they were running around the New York Stock Exchange, wouldn't even have been able to imagine the types of, of products that have been able to be created, and really ultimately the value that's been able to be created from structuring a system. What I get so excited about is I basically think healthcare is the ultimate clinical reasoning-based activity. From the very top, from the very moment that a patient is engaging with a clinician, there is judgment, there's non-determinism, there's reasoning happening, and everything that comes downstream from that, because of the entropy there, is it requires judgment, and is just it ends up being sort of this unstructured mess. And if you structure it from the moment the patient's going from A to B, you have like a structured entity that you can do all these incredible things, right? So we can say, hey, that's actually not the best. We might be able to help the pharmacist identify that is actually not the most clinically relevant treatment for this patient, really at a system-wide level, intelligently. And there's kind of a whole host of things like that we're about to announce, some very interesting both products and partnerships, because once you've structured as many patient encounters as we have, you can basically really, really help those providers give the best service to those patients. So I know it's a super vague answer, but the marketing team would have my neck if I blew some things like a month out of announcing it. So
yeah, we'll keep our eye out. But thank you. So I think with that, I'll thank Trey and the Tennr team for their time. We look forward to keeping a dialogue with you. And also, please check out our Bourne Partners Deep Dive Research Report on the Holderman alternate site infusion therapy space at www.bourne-partners.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don.